Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Solo Sessions. I'm your host, Ben Kanute, and in full transparency, this is not my first take. I am that guy who recorded an entire podcast episode for you guys and proceeded to not have any sound because my mic was muted. So I have some practice now, practice talking to myself as I get into who I am, what the heck is this podcast, and not only why am I doing it, but what is my why for the sport that I do in general. My name, as you heard at the beginning, is Ben Kanute. I am going to be the only one talking to you today. I am a professional triathlete, an Olympian, a world champion at the mixed relay, a two-time 70.3 podium. It's a second place in 2017 and 2022. And I've been doing triathlon for pretty much my entire life, everywhere from youth, junior, and beyond. But I won't bore you with all of the details, nitty-gritty results, because you can use Google, and maybe in the next episode or another one we can go into all of that if that's what people are interested in. But now the podcast, and this is already, this is a little bit weird. I'm going solo on this, just like a long ride. For pretty much my entire professional career, I've done most of my training on my own. Long rides, runs, time in the pool, and there's a lot of time to think and go over things, reflect on not just the sport, but life. And I feel like it's an interesting forum for, I guess, a structure for a podcast. I haven't really heard too many athletes just ramble on, and I can definitely ramble. I find that a lot of times on Instagram and YouTube, I'm finding myself trying to be short and concise and try and really get the point across and not really go too in depth, because that's just the style of Instagram and YouTube. You might have 5, 30, 90 seconds on Instagram, and you might have 10 to 20 minutes for a YouTube video, and you're trying to pack in a lot of information on all of those platforms. So for me to be able to sit down and go through whatever I'm thinking about in a more fleshed out topic, a fleshed out way, I think that's something that kind of excites me, and it's definitely going to be a bit weird. Like I said, I did talk to myself for 20 to 30 minutes and not have anything to show for it. So I'm a little bit more practiced, I guess, at this point, and that's all right. Practice makes perfect, or should we say perfect practice. I can see the little noise bar going up and down now, so I'm pretty hopeful that we'll have sound by the end of this. And if not, I guess a take 3 is in order. But I've been playing around, I guess, with podcast ideas for a while. This mic has been sitting on my desk. My wife and I put it on our registry, and this idea is just, I guess, a super simple one. It's definitely different to look at myself in a camera and speak right to it. I don't particularly like listening to myself or watching myself, but I think that that's something that everybody kind of struggles with, and hopefully people out there, if there is anybody listening, also finds me, bearable to listen to, whether I'm on the background noise around your house or I'm in your ears on a long ride. So I'm definitely not talking like this when I'm out riding, just as an FYI, because that's just a little too crazy. There's definitely a few sentences or maybe some yous out loud, or like a you or something like that, just as you're out riding. But I'm definitely not in this full-on conversation with myself out on the ride. It's all happening in my head, but trying to put it, not quite pen to paper, but I guess voice it out loud and have a place where I can do that. And I'm not exactly entirely sure what all these topics are going to be. I think this first one kind of came to me. There's this explanation, I guess, of why I'm doing the podcast, but then to really dive deep into why do I do triathlon and what is my why? Because people talk about that. They talk about loving the process and the journey, and every so often you hear a short audio clip of it on Instagram, but I don't feel like people really spend a lot of time trying to go in and dissect it. And I love watching people who are good at what they do and excel at what they do, not just for sport, but for just life in general, whatever they're doing. I do think professional sport is one of those things that's very forward facing. You can watch it on TV, you can go to events, you can watch these people execute what they're doing relatively easily. And you can't always do that. You can't always go into a boardroom and watch, high level executives workout deals or anything like that, and unless there's some sort of TV show associated with it or you're allowed to be in the room with them. So that's where I think I can sit down and watch any sort of sports competition, and I can also, listen to people talk about how they perform and what they do like all day. I talk with my mental coach a lot about, some of the greatest athletes of all time and their process. And so this is some of the stuff that I think I could really get into. And, it might just be triathlon specific. We could keep it superficial and do a lot of stuff like nutrition and training and that those sorts of topics, or even current events in triathlon. But I think that also the mental side is just really fascinating to me, and spend a lot of time thinking about it when I'm out training. So without really any further delay or introduction, we can kind of go into the very first part of why I love what I do and do what I do. And it all started when I was a kid. And when you look at some of these greatest of all times, like a Kobe or I could list off a bunch of them, but I think he comes back. There's this childlike curiosity and fun that you have whenever you do what you do, and you try and hold on to that for as long as you can. And people who really excel, even you look at Ronaldo or just any high performing sports person, they have this sort of fun that they have and curiosity about their game, and they just love it kind of to their core, where it's almost like a part of themselves. And I feel like I have that because I grew up in triathlon, and as nerdy as our sport kind of is, I just fell in love with it. I love swimming, biking, and running. It's some of the first things you love to do as a kid. Like jumping in a pool or a body of water is just so natural. Riding your bike fast and feeling the wind, just run around you, flow through your hair is also just one of the greatest joys. And then running from point A to point B as fast as you can. It's all just so pure to me. And I love that purity. And I was born competitive. And that just, I think, also drives me. And I guess from that first time I did a triathlon, I didn't expect or even know that professional triathlon was a thing. I just knew it was something that I loved to do and that I really wanted to do. And there's a good community around it, but just the sport itself, I think in general, you have to have some of that obsession with it. And as I got older, you fell in love with the gear and how do I train and eat, and what is the racecraft? Like, how do I recognize the correct racing movements? It's this puzzle and this process that you go through and that you live. And to me, racing is a way to continue to push myself as well. And I found so much joy in that, in seeing in that curiosity of how far can I go? Like, what is my limit? And even with that, that's why I love sprint finishes so much, and particularly in triathlon, because, that's my medium. This is what I do. I'm going to always come back to triathlon, of course, because that's my profession. But when you're going for, a super sprint is 20 minutes and Ironman's 7.5, 8 hours or so, and you're trying to put out your best effort throughout the entire race, that's what you train for, to be able to hit and empty the tank when you cross the finish line. And then you find yourself coming up to the very end of the race, and you're toe to toe with them, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to beat this person? And there's never a question. And there's this clip on Instagram. It's from a movie. I should probably go watch the movie. I don't know what it is, but this guy's talking about himself, and just somebody's asking him, like, why? Like, why don't you just quit? And he's like, I don't think you understand. Like, I can't quit. It's a part of me. I don't know how to. And that's that part. You got the love for the game, but then there's this competitiveness. There's some other part deep down within me that I've just bought into in competition, and just this pure love for it, where you're trying to sprint with somebody and you already think that you've emptied the tank, but you find that little bit extra, and the only option is to try and cross that finish line first. And you win some, you lose some, but when you do cross the finish line first, and this is going to tangent me into somewhere else, but it's not so much about beating that other person. It's that almost aha moment of, I just went a little bit harder than I thought I ever could. I didn't know. If I was racing on my own, I wouldn't have been able to push myself that hard. And you unlock like an extra room. And I think that's so motivating. That's a huge part of why I do it, when you have those little breakthroughs. And a sprint finish is just one of those, where you're going through but that it's not about being, because I've sprinted for first place, third place, fifth place. It doesn't matter what place. It's that competition and that just pureness of it, and that knowing I was just felt like I was going at my limit, but I just clicked and there's something else there. And so you want to explore that. And that exploration keeps that childlike love for your sport and that passion for it. And it's just that fire that you keep throwing logs on because you keep finding different things along the way. And I think this is really what people talk about when they talk about it's not the end result, it's the journey. Well, that journey is that curiosity that, I have this obsession with being faster. How far can I push myself? That's the essence of this sport. And the essence of anybody who's great is how far can I go? Can I be the best? And you have that almost silly, stupid belief that, yes, I can. And that's a whole different topic of, I guess, confidence, momentum, and all of that, because it keeps you coming back for more with that belief. And maybe that is kind of the why. But I think in pure essence of it, it is just that there's that love and that curious exploration of what's next. And that's why, I'm having this kind of this conversation is all very pertinent to what I'm doing right now, because I'm at a point in my career where I haven't won a race in maybe 2 or 3 years. And that's kind of a tough thing. You don't really think about your why as much when you're winning. I think that there's a lot of high performing individuals, or there's a few of them who have stepped away from sport, business, whatever, and everybody kind of loses their mind over, why would you leave? And I think the answer is it's not about the winning. And that's just a very superficial kind of a result that you can get. And that whole process to it is way more fulfilling, and it's just one check. And that's, I think that this topic has kind of come up pretty recently too with the Scotty Scheffler interview, where he's saying that winning majors isn't that fulfilling. And I think that's because it's not really the point of what you're doing. You're trying to be the best, and it's win or lose. So that's why it doesn't really matter. That's why when you're questioning, you do question a lot when you're not winning, though. When you're not performing, you start to figure it really does force you to reflect on your why and what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you waking up early? And it can't be to win races, because that moment's fleeting and it's on to the next goal. And that ability to, set those high goals is good, but it's always kind of that next thing, because this whole thing is just living and going on from it. But I really wanted to go back to Scotty's quote, because I thought it's kind of a segue into what the other part of my why is, which is to inspire people. And you don't start that way. And Scotty says he's not in the business of inspiring the next generation of golfers. And for me, you start racing, you're having a bunch of fun. Sport is, it's competition. You're just focused on that enjoyment and love for it. And then as you go, I think you kind of develop more. Like I was just a kid when I started. And now, it's 20 years later or more that I've been doing this sport, 25 even. And I've my why has grown deeper and developed as I've gone. I think you have to hold on to that, to what really started the sport for you, that fun and the love for it, the obsession. But then you start to go, okay, well, I'm inspired by some of these other sports performers and stuff. Like I want to inspire people and I want to bring them into the sport. I love triathlon. I want them to also race with me and everything. And I think you dig a little deeper though than that. Like I would love for the whole entire world to be obsessed with triathlon like I am, but maybe it's not for everybody, and I can understand that. But then you go, okay, well, I think Scotty's point in the grand scheme of things is that we're entertainers as a professional athlete, and in the grand scheme of humanity, we're not providing that much. It's a pretty meaningless profession if you just do it for the accolades or for the winning. It's what are you contributing to society? And, I kind of will get into some of the why for maybe life. The answer to life will be at the end of this podcast. So make sure that you follow all the way through. But it's more of, if you're just doing it for that, it's just not so much. And the professional athlete, I'd love to say that I can make a difference. And maybe if I touch one person, and this is just me kind of going off and hoping and dreaming that maybe my story could touch somebody else. Because that's what you start to do. You start to tell a story and you entertain and you try and show people through to keep pushing, to never give up, to go follow your passion. Because I'm not unaware that being a professional athlete, like I'm super blessed to be able to do that and very lucky to live the life I do. But I'm not going to say that I started off with a bunch of talent. I was not a phenom coming in to triathlon as a whole. Like I've had to work very hard to get to where I'm at. And if I could just get somebody to, just even one person maybe, to understand that and to say you work hard and you dream big, then you too can achieve what you want to. And maybe that one person, as far-fetched as maybe this is, or as hopeful as this might be, maybe they're going to affect humanity in a very positive way. Maybe they are going to find a cure for cancer, find the cure for world hunger, make world peace, just be a better and bigger contribution to society than I am. That's maybe like a very whimsical or hopeful thing to think about with inspiring others. But I don't know. I feel like that's, as maybe professional athletes, part of our role is to be able to do something like that, because otherwise, and entertain at the same time, because hell, that's just fun. You got to be entertaining. You have to have fun with it, because at the end of the day, we're putting on a show. With that, I'm going to move on to the fact, as it's gotten even deeper, I think, as I've become a father as well. Because I guess to recap, like you're going through, when you first find the sport, just the love and you're involved in it, it's all about kind of yourself. And then you start to grow up and you start to branch out and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe other people can come and join me, or I can inspire others. And then you become a dad or a parent and you're like, man, I've got some little humans who I'm responsible for, and I want them to be able to grow up and achieve their dreams as well. But how do you do that? As a dad, like I would love to shelter them from every hardship in life and protect them from everything, but that's not possible. Life is not fair. And I feel like sport is such a good example of that. Like sport is just not fair. Sometimes you get a flat tire. Sometimes, you crash or you get an injury or whatever. And as much as, I love sport and it shows the triumph of the human spirit, which, by the way, Challenge Athletes Foundation, I think, you want to find a why. They do a great example of why sport is so important and why I do triathlon. So this is a little tangent on the side that maybe wasn't 100% planned, but that phrase of like triumph of the human spirit is just so great. And it just puts it into this perspective of, it doesn't matter, necessarily what your situation in life is. Like sport is just this parallel, and it just gives you freedom. Sport does. And it allows you to go out and push yourself in whatever way you want. And, you can overcome things. It teaches you to overcome adversity when it happens. And I'm not going to say I've had a very adversity filled life overall, but my triathlon career has been filled with plenty of ups and downs. And I would think that maybe some people look at where I'm at right now and people might go, what are you doing? You're not getting the performances that you want. Like, why are you still doing this? But it's that never quit, never die attitude. And I want my kids to be able to learn that. They're going to face adversity in life. Hell, they probably already do, whether it's when they're playing soccer or anything. And that's teaching them how to handle that. And that's just basic life skills that they will be able to then apply later on in life. And I want to set the example of, setting those big, scary goals, and whether you achieve them or not, know that it's not a failure, because failure is just this made up word that we created to basically describe an outcome, when really it's just a part of the process. You might come up to your goal, but as I look back, I had plenty of goals as I was growing up: junior world champs, national championships, different WTCS races, 70.3s, Ironmans. I hit a lot of my goals. And at the end of that, there were more goals that I set. Every race feels like the biggest race in your life until you do it and you get to the other side of it, whether you did really well or not, and then you move on to the next one. So as long as you're growing and have a growth mindset, which is, again, a whole nother podcast, but as long as you have that growth mindset and know, whatever the result is, I'm going to learn from this. There is no failure. that's when you can really start to become your best self, because you're not afraid of setting limit or setting high goals, because you aren't limiting yourself. You're not going into start line or anywhere else scared. You have the courage to step on it. And that's just things, and, having that perseverance and all sorts of stuff. There's just so many great little lessons in sport, whether you're a professional or not, that are just so good for kids to learn. And that's what I want to be. I want to be a strong father figure. And it just starts in how I go about living my life. And triathlon's this big part of it. And it's such a great teacher in all of those, I guess, characteristics. So I want them to be able to watch me step on the biggest, scariest start line and not be afraid of anything, because at the end of the day, the result doesn't really matter. It's about how hard are you pushing yourself? How good can you be? Can you be the best? That's the question that I try and answer every single day. How do I become the best in the world? And it's a little bit crazy. I know you got to be a little bit insane, and you got to have this deep down belief that you can do it. And I think that's maybe this last part of the why a little bit, is just like having that, in just knowing, like, if I set a goal, and this kind of goes like, triathlon is my thing for now. Triathlon doesn't last forever, but it is what I'm pouring my whole self into, as well as being a dad and providing for my family and all of that sort of stuff. But like, this is the goal that I set. I feel like, you shift this to anything. And that's why I kind of went with the inspiration and the love for it. If that love had just been attached to something else, I still feel like, hey, this is my competitive spirit. It's my belief in everything that, you go out and you try and set these big goals and you achieve them. So that is kind of the part that rounds it out, some of that belief, but it's also built up bit by bit every single day. Again, I guess another topic, and I kind of, tangented it off there. But to kind of bring this around full circle, what is then super fulfilling? Like, yes, triathlon to an extent, in my opinion, and the way that I go about the process and the way that I live it, I feel like is fulfilling to an extent. It's not the results necessarily that are fulfilling, but it's the pursuit of that excellence and that perfection that you're trying to do, and having almost like that quote unquote, I guess, noble cause. That's where I feel like that part of it, you're truly living, you're living out your dream, and that can be fulfilling. But when we really get down, we're going to dig a little bit deeper, like, what is, I guess, the meaning of life, but what is everybody's why? I think it kind of comes back to love, but it's not really a love for a thing. It's a love for yourself, for your family, your inner circle, the community that you have, and a spiritual belief in something bigger than yourself, having that bigger purpose. And I think those kind of things like kind of touch at the core of what even I'm doing right now. And then you kind of work your way up from that, just, kind of two key things, the love and the belief in something like some higher spiritual being or some faith, having faith. And you kind of build on that into whatever it is that you do in life. And so that's what I think I've tried to do in triathlon and how I try and live. So I think that about kind of covers all of the whys. I guess there's other areas where we could tangent off into and really dive deep, but I feel like those are starting to get separate topics, and I'm going to try and keep it as focused as possible. So thank you for joining me on this first episode. It feels a bit narcissistic to just be talking by myself and rambling on, filling, just the air with noise, but I feel like it is also motivating for me. It's a bit of an exercise, I guess, in trying to think through a few of these topics a little bit more and try and dive deeper into them. So I'm going to keep trying to flesh these out as much as possible. Like, if this one ends up being a little bit short, I think we're coming up, 25, 30 minutes here. Maybe that's not long enough for a podcast. Maybe I should have gone a little deeper, but I don't know. This is pretty free form. I don't have this necessarily set way that I'm going to do things. I'd love for it to just be a little bit of a train of thought. I had a little bit of notes here to kind of keep myself on track a little bit, try and fight some of the awkwardness of just talking to myself for 30 minutes. But in the future, maybe we'll just pick a topic and see where it leads. But thanks again. If you do have any suggestions, comments, feedbacks, you want to hear a certain topic, I'm going to try and go and give this a real solid go overall. And I'm not, as long as I don't get tired and you guys don't get tired of hearing me talk, I'm going to keep trying to do this as long as possible. I feel like there's some opportunity here to dive into certain topics. So before I just ramble on and tangent to more, I guess I'll just wrap this up, close it out, and really say thanks for listening to the first Solo Sessions podcast. I guess now on my long rides, long runs, I have a purpose to a lot of the ramblings that go on in my mind, and we'll try and make this a real regular thing. So I hope this was worthwhile, that you got a little better picture of maybe who I am, what I do, why I do it, and will join me for some more topics and some more things that we can really get to the nitty-gritty on and try and, flesh it out. So let me know. I guess I'm also happy to follow up, answer questions as well, since I'm just on my own and I'm just kind of rambling. There's probably some things that I did skip over. So look forward to hearing anything if there is anybody out there. And if not, then this is just another solo session talking to myself. Thanks, everyone.